Slide 1. Today, we thoroughly analyze the quiet crisis hitting the semiconductor supply chain in 2026. Structural shifts caused by PFAS regulations and 3M's exit. In early 2026, the global semiconductor industry faces an existential crisis, distinct from technological limits. At the epicenter lies the tightening global regulation of PFAS, known as forever chemicals, and the complete withdrawal of chemical giant 3M from their manufacturing. In semiconductor manufacturing, PFAS is like blood. Without it, not a single cutting-edge chip can be made. Europe's total ban proposal, America's national security, logic, and Japan's strict treaty compliance, a labyrinth of intertwined regulations, and the risk of material supply disruption. I will unravel this chemical risk that investors often overlook with dense original analysis. Slide 2. The 3M shock collapse of the coolant market. First, let's explain the 3M shock that shook the industry. At the end of 2025, 3M completely exited PFAS manufacturing. This was a nightmare for the semiconductor industry, because the company held about an 80% share of the market for fluorinated inert liquids, coolants essential for chip manufacturing. Products like Fluorinert and Novec were the de facto standards for temperature control in etching equipment and tester cooling. With the disappearance of this dominant supply source, a massive void has been created in the market. Now in 2026, the panic buying phase is over, and the ruthless reality of zero inventory is starting to hit fabs. Slide 3. The battle for alternatives: AGC, Daikin, Solvay. Alternative suppliers are waging a fierce battle to fill this void. Key players to watch are Japan's AGC and Daikin Industries, and Belgium's Solvay. AGC is leveraging its technology cultivated in Fluon fluoropolymers, while Daikin is making offensive moves with system-wide cooling solutions. However, investors must know about the walls here. One is equipment maker certification. Even if the material is ready, fabs cannot adopt it unless equipment makers like Tokyo, Electron, or Lam Research certify that it won't break the machine. The queue for this certification is currently a bottleneck. The other is the IP intellectual property minefield. Even if 3M exits, their patents haven't disappeared. Attempting to make the same thing risks infringing on the patent web, delaying the development of alternatives. Slide 4. Why PFAS is irreplaceable. Why is the semiconductor industry so dependent on PFAS in the first place? The reason lies in its unique chemical properties. For example, in cutting-edge EUV lithography, the photoacid generator patch contained in the photoresist requires a fluorine structure to control acid diffusion. Without it, nano-level resolution cannot be maintained, and circuits become blurry. Also, in etching processes that dig deep holes, like in 3D NAND memory, processing cannot be established, unless fluorinated gases create a film to protect the sidewalls. In other words, eliminating PFAS is a challenge, so technically difficult that it implies the end of Moore's Law. Slide 5. Global regulatory fragmentation, EU, US, Japan. Complicating matters further is the divergent regulatory approach by region. In Europe, under REACH regulations, a universal restriction proposal to ban about 10,000 types of PFAS collectively is being deliberated. In contrast, in the US, the Department of Defense argues that semiconductors are essential for national security, and coordination with regulators continues. And Japan is faithful to international treaties and maintains strict import bans on specific PFAS. Global companies are forced to manage dual or triple supply chains to cope with this regulatory patchwork. Slide 6. The essential use. Battle 12 years or forever. The last stronghold for the industry's survival is the recognition of essential use in European regulations. Currently, a grace period of maximum 12 years is proposed for semiconductor manufacturing uses. However, industry groups are fiercely opposing this. It is not uncommon for semiconductor manufacturing equipment to operate for over 20 years. If the supply of spare parts stops in 12 years, legacy chips supporting automobiles and infrastructure can no longer be made. Caught between environmental protection and industrial sovereignty, the outcome of this lobbying will determine the future of the European semiconductor industry. Slide 7. The Japan shock inventory limits in 2026, particularly critical to watch in the Japanese market, is the aftermath of the PFAS regulation. CTESTART Japan was one of the first to comprehensively ban this substance. Under the Chemical Substances Control Law, in February 2024, Site 1063, Site 1064. Now that 2 years have passed, domestic inventories secured during the buffer period are finally reaching their limit. The regulation is not coming soon. It is a crisis already in progress. For certain special etchants and resist additives, the risk is materializing, where certification of alternatives is not in time, leading to potential supply stoppages. Slide 8, infrastructure risk. Investing in closed loops. Often overlooked is the infrastructure of the semiconductor factory itself. Pipes carrying ultra-pure water and chemicals, tank linings. These extensively use fluorescents with the strongest chemical resistance. Replacing all of these with non-fluorine materials is impossible. The only realistic solution is to build a closed-loop system that continues use, while reducing environmental emissions to near zero. Here, new massive markets are emerging for water treatment companies, like Organo and Kurita Water Industries. In addition to Ibarra Corporation for exhaust gas treatment. Slide 9. Supply chain bifurcation and cost increase. This regulatory environment will bifurcate the supply chain. It will become necessary to use different materials and processes for regions with strict regulations like Europe versus those with relatively looser regulations. This will clearly push up the manufacturing cost of semiconductor wafers. Material scarcity, increased compliance costs, and transition expenses to alternatives. Analyses by firms like Tech Insights predict that it is inevitable. These factors will eventually be passed on to chip prices. The era of using chemicals cheaply and freely is completely over. Slide 10. Conclusion. Investing in environmental adaptability. In conclusion, 3M's withdrawal and PFAS regulations are a forced evolution for the semiconductor industry. Over the next 10 years, suppliers and fabs that cannot adapt to this challenge will be weeded out. Investors should focus on the enablers who will save us from this crisis. AGC and Daikin Industries filling 3M's void. Organo and Kurita Water Industries realizing zero emissions. And material manufacturers developing next-generation PFAS-free materials. Companies with the adaptability to ride out the rough waves of environmental regulation will hold the hegemony of the next era.